Simon & Schuster Audio presents Star Trek Deep Space Nine Fallen Heroes by David Abhu. Read by Rene Auberjonois.
Personal log of Constable Odo, stardate 47237.5. I do not see the purpose for this exercise in verbal rationalization. Why do I need a personal log to justify executing my law enforcement duties on Deep Space Nine? Either I maintain order in this maelstrom of immorality, in which case what do my methods matter? Or else I fail, and I should be discharged. But the chattering class of Federation officers has dictated that every action be thoroughly justified before, during, and after the fact. Thus, I bow to the inevitable. This particular incident began when a rattletrap Lenation freighter that looked like something the Ferengi dragged in limped through the wormhole from the Gamma Quadrant. The owner, a Captain Square Deal John Reel, assuming that isn't an alias, rushed straight to Quark, our own public enemy number one, owner of the source of the maelstrom of immorality, Quark's place. There, they concluded a transaction for a sealed Cardassian lockbox. The deal was typically Ferengi. Captain John Reel demanded hard latinum up front, but Quark managed to talk the dim-witted Lenation into selling the box on consignment, splitting the proceeds, I'm not making this up, 60-60. As I said, Lenations are not known for their blinding intelligence. I was quite worried about the box's contents. I decided to investigate.
Odo, the shape-shifting constable of Deep Space Nine, suddenly loomed behind Quark, causing the startled Ferengi to leap to his feet.
You damn spy! What were you this time? A chair? A waste disposal unit?
What was I? Why, I was your conscience, Quark. No wonder you didn't notice me.
What do you want now?
Constable Odo put his hand firmly on the Cardassian box.
This will be scanned by Chief O'Brien before anybody opens it. What if there's a bomb inside?
Quark tried to snatch the box from Odo's grip. He argued and wheedled, then grudgingly conceded, primarily because he was unable to budge Odo's hand from the box.
All right, but it's mine, all mine, and I don't want O'Brien opening it, just scanning.
After an interminable search, they managed to track down Master Chief Miles O'Brien, the station's chief engineer. Busy as he was, he grudgingly made time when Odo told him the box was from the Gamma Quadrant.
Nothing dangerous. 3 inert objects, a Cardassian disruptor. A disruptor? Discharged. Also some unknown device. What does it do? Well, not enough power to do anything much.
Quark plucked the box from Odo's frustrated grasp and stormed back to his own office. But the constable stuck like gum to the Ferengi's heels. After futilely trying to shoo Odo away, Quark set the box on his desk and began to gently pick the lock. Inside were 3 squatty statues, each more grotesque than the last. The depleted Cardassian disruptor, absolutely valueless, and the unknown device, whose only value lay in its mystery. The device was shaped like a dark gray belt buckle, larger than a phaser, but smaller than a tricorder. Tiny sucker pads made it stick to the box, to Quark's hand, to the table when he yanked his paw away. There was no physical button, but Quark's sensitive ear hairs told him it had a microwave switch. He picked up his ear pricker, a Ferengi tool for manipulating frequency locks and other electromagnetic buttons, and gently probed the device. Odo glared suspiciously at Quark.
Where did you get that burglar's lockpick, Quark?
It's perfectly legal, too. Definitely a microwave vortex switch. So, what does this thing do?
I haven't the slightest idea, and I have no more time to waste on you. I have a station full of less successful criminals than you to jail. Hand it over.
It's mine! You can't have it!
Hand it over for testing. O'Brien will thoroughly test this item before you get it back. I'm sure he'll be able to get around to it in a few days.
But what if the oaf accidentally destroys it while testing it?
Then you can pay that pirate captain 60% of the nothing you'll get for it.
You were spying on me!
Furious, Quark leaped up, the alien device in one hand, ear pricker in the other, poised dramatically.
If there's any testing to do, I'll do it myself. Stand by to be dazzled.
No, put that down. I will not allow you to jeopardize this station by activating some unknown Gamma Quadrant device. Quark pressed the ear pricker contact button, probing the force vortex. The ear pricker matched frequencies immediately. Deep Space Nine lurched beneath the Ferengi's feet. The lights vanished into a soupy blackness. Squealing like a stuck Greeka pup, he dropped both ear pricker and alien device, feeling his body rolled flat like cookie dough. He awoke on the deck in eerie silence. The dim blue glow of emergency lighting lit the office. Quark climbed shakily to his knees, rubbing his aching ears. A puddle quivered on the floor. It drew into itself, formed up into a column of Constable Odo. Odo glowered as if to say, I meant to do that. Something was terribly wrong. But for a moment, Quark could not identify the problem. Then he noticed his sensitive ears were sending an urgent message. Silence. 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 No customers. No howls from the Dabo players. Quark heard nothing but the steady hum of his antique Klingon clock.
What happened to the rest of the station?
Maybe your new toy made them all go away. Shaking, Quark stooped, picked up the alien device instead of his beloved ear pricker. He could not have said why. As he stood, he felt a metal band clamp around his biceps. It was Odo's hand, which he had shifted into a manacle. The constable touched his comm badge. Odo to Ops. Odo to Ops. Major Kira, are you available? Anybody? Ops? Engineering? Security? Chief O'Brien, can you get the lights on in Quark's place? Where is everybody? All right, Quark. Let's take a little stroll. Odo propelled Quark out the office door and down the stair onto the main floor of Quark's place. It was dark, all the lights off, as in the office. There were no customers. Something was on the floor, a bundle. Odo knelt, examined it. I think you'd better have a look at this. Reluctantly, Quark crouched, stared at the bundle. It was a man, a Ferengi. It was wrong. He was covered with dried blood from a dozen wounds. Quark backpedaled from his brother's body.
I had nothing to do with this. You're my witness, Odo.
I didn't see a thing, Quark. I was a puddle of liquid, remember? Rom had been slain by a dozen puncture wounds, each made with considerable force. Odo made a pair of long fingers, inserted them into one hole, and plucked out a flattened cylinder of soft metal, approximately 10 millimeters in diameter. Do you recognize this, Quark?
It's not mine.
I mean, you villain, do you recognize what kind of weapon this is? Quark peeked between his fingers.
Chemically propelled rifle bullet.
Now, why would someone use it on a shopkeeper? Quark, I think I see more bodies. They found 4 other corpses, all customers shot by the same sort of chemically propelled bullets. Odo sought for a motive. Is there anything missing, Quark?
Missing?
Taken. Was anything taken by the killers?
Taken? You mean stolen?
Reminded of Ferengi priorities, Quark ran to the safe. Inside were 6 bars of gold-pressed latinum, untouched, and thousands of Dabo chips. Not a single item of value was taken.
You mean they did all this for some reason other than loot?
Odo ignored the Ferengi's question.
I don't like this. Firearms are loud. Somebody should have heard the weapon's discharge. Where is everybody?
Odo dragged Quark out of the door into the promenade, then stopped in confusion. Dozens of dead bodies were piled in heaps along the bulkheads. Even manacled by Odo's fist, Quark managed to cringe, a remarkable display of contortionism.
It's not my fault. I didn't do it. It's you. You did it.
Silence, Quark. Do you have a chronometer that isn't tied to the station computer?
I have an antique Klingon clock in my office, battery-powered. Why?
I need a time check for the investigation. I have a terrible feeling I know what's happened.
What investigation?
Even if we're the only people left alive on this station, I am still the constable, and I will conduct an investigation. Any questions?
No questions.
Klingon clock. I have a terrible feeling I know what's happened.
Odo took the stairs 4 at a time, dragging Quark. In the Ferengi's office, the constable studied the clock.
Quark, what time do you see on this clock?
Quark glanced at the clock, then did a double-take.
Wait, that can't be right. The batteries must be low.
What does it show?
It says, 10:35, stardate 47237.8, but that's wrong. That's 3 days from now. Besides, my pocket watch shows it's 12:38 already.
Odo stared at the clock. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion.
No, Quark. It's not wrong. Your blasted Gamma Quadrant device seems to have locked us into a static time bubble for 3 days. And somehow, during that time, something or someone attacked and destroyed Deep Space Nine. And if no one has come to help by now, after all this time, then I suspect they aren't coming at all.
Major Kira Nerys, first officer of Deep Space Nine, had the comm. She finally asked the question that had puzzled her all day.
Has anybody seen Odo or Quark for the last 26 hours?
She was not particularly concerned about the latter, but it was odd that both Constable and Public Enemy Number 1 should disappear simultaneously. Lieutenant Jadzia Dax, the Trill science officer, checked her console.
Ship coming through the wormhole? No, I haven't seen them, Kira. What kind of ship is that, Dax? It doesn't match any ship designs I've ever seen, and there's something else weird. Yes? Well, it reached the wormhole, so it has warp speed capability, but there is no antimatter on that ship. Kira, these guys are visitors from the Gamma Quadrant. They have to be. Commander Monitor 3, Dax thinks the ship is from the Gamma Quadrant.
The voice of Benjamin Sisko, commander of Deep Space Nine, floated over the communications link from his office.
I'll be right down.
High above them, Sisko popped out of his office. Kira wondered, not for the first time, how he managed to always have a uniform so crisp you could cut bread with the creases, and boots so shiny you could bounce a laser off them. Sisko approached the ops table.
Hail them.
The alien voice echoed eerily through ops.
You will surrender your prisoner or be destroyed.
Kira responded instantly.
Shields up.
Lieutenant Dax huddled over her science console, preternaturally calm.
They're speaking in Cardassian, but they're not Cardassians. Open a channel, Lieutenant. This is Commander Sisko of Bajoran and Federation Station Deep Space Nine. We are holding no prisoners from the Gamma Quadrant.
Prepare to be boarded.
Dax, get us some help.
Kira futilely tried to raise the constable.
Odo, answer me. Security, anybody, priority 1.
Nobody responded to either Dax's subspace message or Kira's emergency call. Chief O'Brien shouted from the engineering well.
They put a shield around the station. It's stopping all subspace communications.
Can you break through it, Chief?
No, Lieutenant.
Sisko interrupted with a more urgent question.
Chief, are our own shields holding?
So far, sir, but we can't break out. Sisko nodded, decided to escalate the situation.
Kira, fire phasers, but just burn their noses a bit. Nothing too serious.
Kira's fingers ripped across her console, almost too fast to see.
Damn it, I can't lock on them. Firing by visual.
She fired 2 short phaser bursts, one at each propulsion pod of the alien ship. The blue phaser streams struck their targets. Incredibly, the phaser blasts reflected like lasers off a mirror. Astonished, she fired a barrage along the alien hull. Wherever the phasers struck, they reflected.
Incoming, large metallic, missile of some sort.
Kira tried to lock onto the missile to shoot it down, but was as unsuccessful as before.
I can't lock on the damn thing.
Chief O'Brien remained unruffled.
Don't worry, sir, the shields are holding.
But the missile passed through the shields as it would a pane of colored glass. Everyone froze. Only Sisko moved to the tractor beam console.
Batter up!
The commander activated the tractor beam, swept it like a baseball bat, and sent the missile spinning off above the station.
Blast! Foul ball.
O'Brien was stunned. What he had just seen was impossible by every rule of physics he knew.
Commander, it went right through the shields like they weren't there.
A white light flared on the screen. At the same time, every electronic display in ops blinked off, then flickered back on again.
Security here. Major Kira, are you all right?
Find Odo immediately. Urgent. Incoming number 2.
Kira followed Sisko's lead, using the tractor bat to knock the next missile far away before it exploded.
Chief, I want to know how a torpedo could slide through our shields like butter. Sir, I think we have a worse problem to worry about. What problem is that, O'Brien? Sir, when that thing exploded, it knocked our shields down for a half second. During that moment, I think they beamed some people aboard. Where? Promenade. Incoming 3!
Kira was kept busy for several minutes as the alien ship fired missile after missile.
Somebody has to go hunt them down. Where the hell is Odo?
Gone since yesterday. I've got security out looking. Just then, the station rocked as another missile exploded.
O'Brien, you know this station better than anyone. Beam directly to the security office and find those invaders. Sisko to Bashir.
The eager voice of Julian Bashir, the station's medical officer, answered immediately.
Bashir here, sir.
We're under attack. Casualties might be coming your way. It could get heavy, Doctor. We've been boarded by what might be a strike team. They're on the promenade.
I understand, sir. I'll prepare.
Kira, patch me station-wide.
This is Commander Sisko. I regret to inform you that Deep Space Nine has been invaded by a hostile force. There are invaders inside the station. Everybody must evacuate the promenade immediately. Return to the habitation ring. That is the direct order. Sisko out. Major, get me a continuous feed from O'Brien. I want to know everything that happens before it happens.
Miles O'Brien materialized in the security office. A platoon was just preparing to confront the invaders.
I hate to say this, but you'd better take me along.
The platoon crept along the promenade, following Chief O'Brien's tricorder readings. The chief held up his hand, and they all halted.
Just around the curve, 15 are bunched up in the middle of the deck, 20 meters ahead.
Lieutenant Moreau, Odo's second-in-command, nodded and put her finger to her lips. She gestured, and the platoon swept forward slowly. There was no mistaking the invaders. They looked like they stepped out of a holoplay about extragalactic stormtroopers. Gray and black armored suits, shiny black bubble helmets, and a strange-looking weapon O'Brien had never seen before. Lieutenant Moreau spoke through a universal translator PA system in her helmet. "Nobody move." The aliens did not bother responding verbally. They leveled their own guns. Moreau's security platoon fired first. Cold blue phaser beams lanced out, and every shot hit its target. But the beams reflected in a kaleidoscopic swirl of high-intensity energy bursts that burned holes through the surrounding bulkheads. One reflected phaser blast caught a security woman in her midsection, killing her instantly. The invaders were not affected. They returned fire, and Miles O'Brien thought the gates of hell had opened wide. Their chemical explosive firearms were loud. He covered his ears, crouched for cover. The invaders' firearms fired rounds so quickly they functioned like directed energy weapons with terrific impact. Moreau slapped her comm badge and shouted an order.
Force shield 91 up!
Between the security force and the invaders, a shield popped up, shimmered protectively.
Retreat, regroup. Force shield 93 up!
Another shield popped up behind the invaders, trapping them.
I bet they're about to become great believers in diplomacy. I hope you're right. Personally, I have a bad feeling about this.
The invader leaders strode forward, directly into the force shield. The shield crackled, and electricity discharged all around the invader's armor, outlining it. The invader continued walking, unimpeded. Its comrades followed. Moreau stared, astonished.
Fire! Hit him with everything!
The shots reflected as easily as before. Then the invaders raked the security team with automatic fire. The men and women to O'Brien's left were ripped open by the high-velocity projectiles. One of the invaders fired a large projectile into the platoon. The concussion knocked O'Brien off his feet from 10 meters away, sent him sliding along the deck, stunned but uninjured. The rest of the security platoon was in full flight, badly injured and shooting wildly. O'Brien sprinted back toward the security office, hearing another explosive concussion behind him as he ran. He felt like a coward for not staying and getting killed, even though he knew it was much more important that someone survive and warn the commander. O'Brien gasped for breath, spoke through the already open comlink.
Commander!
Sisko here.
They've got some kind of armor. Phasers don't affect them. We need something physical, something to kick their teeth in.
Damn! We've got to hold them on the promenade. If they get into ops or the habitat ring, we may as well abandon the whole station. Chief, can you make a phaser overload on cue?
Phaser grenade? I never tried, but sure, I guess.
Make some phaser grenades, then tell Dax how to make more. By the way, when was the last time you saw Odo?
Constable Odo? Yesterday. He had some box from the Gamma Quadrant he wanted me to scan. He had Quark in tow. I think it was Quark's box.
The Gamma Quadrant? What was in it?
Not much. A drain disruptor, some statues or something, and a device I couldn't make out on the scan.
What kind of device?
Low power, that's all I could tell. It didn't seem dangerous.
Sisko pondered. A device from the Gamma Quadrant, followed immediately by aliens from the Gamma Quadrant? This is not a coincidence. Odo and Quark had just begun to explore the promenade when Odo stopped, aghast. In the midst of the floor were the remains of one of his security platoons.
3 days. In 3 days, the universe has turned inside out.
Odo dropped to hands and knees to examine the battle scene from line of fire level. Casualties were 100%. Looking back in the apparent direction of the platoon's fire, the constable saw deep phaser burns in every surface, but almost none in the direct line of fire.
I would say the killers were wearing some sort of personal shields that deflected phaser blasts. But if you're saying these assassins can reflect phaser fire without having to absorb it, Odo, they're invulnerable? I don't believe in invulnerability, Quark. The Cardassians tell stories, tall tales about... No, forget it. They're just a myth. Boogeymen to frighten Cardassian children into obedience. Who are?
Ignoring the Ferengi's question, Odo continued around the promenade, picking his way among the dead bodies. He reached the schoolroom, where Keiko O'Brien, wife of the chief engineer, taught Federation and Bajoran children, including Jake Sisko, the commander's son, and Nog, the son of Quark's brother Rom. The pair gazed in shock at the schoolroom. It had been devastated by multiple bomb blasts. A woman was pinned beneath a collapsed bulkhead. She was not moving or making noise.
Quark, give me a hand.
They struggled the bulkhead off her body. Odo knelt to examine her. She had a gaping bullet wound in her forehead and had been dead for several days.
Who is she? It's Keiko O'Brien, your nephew's teacher. Don't you even recognize her, Quark?
Odo pulled Keiko out of the rubble. The bullet had been fired at almost point-blank range, and the wound was surrounded by embedded grains of propellant.
If she was already dead, why is the schoolroom torn apart by explosives? Maybe somebody's fighting back? Quark, this is no ordinary terrorist rampage. These invaders destroyed practically the entire security force, but left no traces of themselves. Somebody jumped us hard, not Cardassians, Romulans, or Borg. There is only one explanation, Quark. Somebody came through the wormhole and obliterated Deep Space Nine. Bloody hell! How did I get myself back in another war?
Blood sprayed as O'Brien had never seen before, covering everything and everybody. The invaders' guns shredded bulkheads, control pads, and anything else in the line of fire. The soft, indirect lighting of the promenade turned into the harsh glare of exposed filaments and yellow, sparking electrical discharges. O'Brien's ears rang so he could barely hear the cries of the dying. A blessing, he decided. He lobbed one of the only 4 phaser grenades he had managed to make before the invaders jumped them. It exploded with a roar that hurt even O'Brien's bruised eardrums. 3 invaders were knocked down, the first casualties inflicted on the enemy. But then they rose to their feet again and loosed volley after volley until the entire security platoon was dead. Only O'Brien himself escaped, hidden in an emergency power conduit. Stunned, he could only whisper,
Commander!
After a moment, Sisko's voice responded. The gain turned so low, O'Brien could barely hear it.
Sir, they got us. There's nobody left. The core section is completely undefended. Sir, did Keiko and Molly get out all right?
Kira's voice came online.
O'Brien, according to the sensors, they're still in the schoolroom with Jake and Nog. Sir, you've got to get a lock on Keiko and the kids and beam them up to Ops. Don't you think I've tried? Some sort of electromagnetic disruption field. They're jamming our transporters. We can't lock on anything. Invaders or anybody else. Oh, for God's sakes, Commander, do something. They're headed toward the school.
Suddenly, Kira cut in again.
O'Brien, I've almost got a lock on you. Is there anything around you that could be blocking their electronic countermeasures? The magnetic containment grid. I'm concealed near the emergency power conduit. The static charge of the grid must block their jamming. Get inside the grid. Okay, you're locked. Energizing.
His gut wrenched as he materialized in a corner of the schoolroom, holding his last 2 phaser grenades, one in each hand. Keiko O'Brien had heard Sisko's evacuation order in the middle of a lesson. She began hustling the children out the door. They left immediately, except for Jake and Nog. Jake stayed because his father would have. Nog because Jake stayed. Molly O'Brien, the 3-year-old daughter of Keiko and Miles O'Brien, also stayed. She was too young to find her way back to the habitat ring by herself. Keiko was just about to grab Molly, Jake, and Nog and leave when 2 soldiers in black and gray armor and bubble helmets entered the classroom. One covered the room with his weapon. The other approached Keiko. She moved Molly behind her.
Where is the other one like us?
I don't understand the question.
Where is the other one like us?
Is there another one like you on board? Reflected in one of the display terminals, Keiko saw that Jake had crawled across the floor, shielded from the Inquisitor's view. He and Nog had silently opened a floor vent. It was too small for the armored invader, but big enough for the children and possibly Keiko herself, if she could reach it.
There is another one who looks like us. Where is the other being held?
Keiko felt Molly crouch. She presumed, she prayed, that Jake was urging Molly to crawl toward the vent. If the other is being held prisoner, he will be in a security cell.
You will take me to the security cell?
The Inquisitor raised its hand weapon, pointed it at Keiko's head. It moved forward, grabbed her shirt. From its new position, the Inquisitor could now see the vent and the escape in progress. The Inquisitor chittered an untranslated word, then an order to its comrade.
Kill small escaping animals.
Instantly, without a thought, Keiko launched herself at the Inquisitor with such unexpected force that she bore it to the deck. She covered its helmet with her body as it tried to wrench free. Then Keiko saw Miles materializing in the schoolroom. "Run, Miles! Run! Run! Run!" The Inquisitor grabbed her hair, yanked her head back. She saw the enormous barrel of his gun. Thunder reverberated in her head, echoing round her skull. No human being could survive a wound like Keiko's. O'Brien stared dully, his entire body numb. He thumbed the contacts on both his phaser grenades, tossed one at the feet of each invader. He made no effort to get out of the way of the blast. "I'm coming, Keiko, my love!" The Inquisitor walked toward O'Brien just as the grenades detonated. Its armored body slammed into the chief, driving him back into a bulkhead and blackness. Quark and Odo cautiously explored the devastated station, wary of bumping into the Gamma Quadrant invaders at every step. They finally pushed through to cross over Tunnel 2, leading to the habitat ring.
I guess they like the dark.
Quark pointed at a shot-up junction node, beyond which the tunnel was plunged in Stygian blackness. They continued, footsteps echoing hollowly, as if in an ancient tomb. An emergency airlock door half-blocked the tunnel mouth. The door was blown off its track by a powerful explosive from the tunnel side. Odo examined the door in the faint starlight.
This is not a diplomatic or trading team. This was a combat unit. If the civilians were going to make a stand, the tunnel mouth would be a perfect spot.
The outer bulkhead was torn apart by a gigantic bomb blast, and every surface was covered with bullet holes and phaser scoring. The deck itself was torn apart, leaving gaping holes to drop an unwary Ferengi 2 or 3 levels through twisted metal ribbons. Quark leapt to a horizontal surface that resembled part of a wall, landing with an ominous echo, his path lit only by the electric torch Odo carried. Odo was right. The defenders had chosen the airlock at the end of Tunnel 2 to make a stand. At least 100 bodies lay where they had fallen, strewn randomly by a massive explosion.
Take a look, Quark. This is war in all its glory gore, not the clean, bloodless death of a phaser or disruptor.
All right, start talking, Odo. You said before you might know these invaders. If you don't tell me, you're violating my civil rights.
You're not civil, and criminals have no rights. I don't know for sure, Quark. I've heard tales.
Yes?
I've never seen documented evidence. There's no real name known for them. The Cardassians just call them...
Odo stopped, stared peculiarly down at a particular piece of wrecked metal. It looked like it was once an air duct.
Yes?
Odo knelt. There was a body in the duct.
Forget it, Odo. It's just another body. The corridor is full of them. What were you saying about the invaders or assassins or whatever they are?
Silence, Quark.
Odo pulled the corpse of a man from its metal coffin. His left arm and shoulder were blown clean off, and the remaining flesh on that side was severely burned. Master Chief Miles O'Brien stared up at them through his unblinking, shrunken right eye. Master Chief Miles O'Brien woke slowly in the wrecked schoolroom. The alien invaders had vanished. Whether alive or dead, he did not know.
Sisko. O'Brien. Chief, we thought you were dead. My comm badge was destroyed. Had to use a corridor touch plate. Sir, I have an idea. Let me put together a civilian militia. I think we might be able to hold them using the phaser grenades. Hurry then. Sisko out.
O'Brien raced along Crossover Tunnel 2 to the Habitat Ring. He rounded up a ragtag force, arming them with as many O'Brien Specials phaser grenades as he could put together. Crossover Tunnel 2 had a strong airlock door that he partially shut. It was the most defensible spot in the vicinity. Just as O'Brien lined up his militia, the invaders discovered the tunnel and advanced toward the Habitat Ring.
We've got to defend this point. If they get past here, we've lost the whole damn station.
The invaders advanced inexorably, laying down a murderous barrage of bullets that ground up the militia as easily as Odo's security team. O'Brien's ears rang from the cacophony of gunshots in the echoing battleground. O'Brien's militia held their ground until the last phaser grenade. After a few moments, the invaders charged against the useless phaser beams, and the few remaining militia members surrendered. O'Brien watched in horror as the invaders began to shoot the survivors, not even bothering to question them. The crushing emotional wave O'Brien had suppressed since Keiko's death burst free. He held out one last O'Brien Special. Silently, he extracted it. A small clump of invaders had gathered about their officer in command.
You murdering bastards!
O'Brien pressed the arm button. In his anger, he forgot to reset it from the default 0 seconds. The O'Brien Special exploded instantly.
The time has come, Quark, to make a few preliminary deductions. Justice is our primary duty now.
Cops, you're all alike. How about saving justice until after we search for survivors?
Survivors? I haven't seen any, Quark. How about you?
How can there not be survivors? The invaders are gone, obviously driven off. Somebody would have found a hole to hide in, and if anybody did, it would be Nog, and maybe Jake.
Huh. The naive first-cut deduction. It fails by inspection. There are no survivors, or we would have seen them by now. The logical deduction is that the invaders killed everyone before they left.
Odo waited for the Ferengi to object, but Quark remained silent.
First, killing the station personnel was clearly secondary, not the primary goal.
It looks pretty primary to me.
Think, Quark. If the invaders meant to simply kill everyone and not take over the station, why not just blow it up with their ship, then escape back through the wormhole?
Maybe they did want the station.
Then where are they? They obviously won. Clearly there's no command personnel left, or they would have sent a distress call and summoned a starship here. There is only one logical answer. They came here looking for something and proceeded to conduct a very thorough, room-by-room search of Deep Space Nine.
Now, don't leave me in suspense. Did they find it?
We don't know yet. My guess is no, or they would have left before killing everyone.
They did leave before killing everyone. We're still alive.
We were in a static time field. No, they killed everyone they found, but did not find what they wanted, despite a thorough search. So either it wasn't here, or it was very well hidden.
Odo's eyes narrowed at exactly the same time Quark's widened.
No, you can't pin this on me, too. Really? It makes perfect sense, Quark. What better place to hide something than inside a static time field? Let's see it, Quark.
After a long pause, Quark removed the invader belt buckle from an inside pocket of his jacket.
Yes, of course. Your Lonat villain doubtless stole this from the Gamma Quadrant, and its rightful owners followed him to DS9 to demand it back. No, that's ridiculous. That can't be right. Oh, and why not? Because if aliens had popped through the wormhole and demanded a stolen Dwoozle widget, don't you think O'Brien would have remembered scanning that box? Your assassins would have just waited around 3 days until we reappeared, then taken it back. You're right, much as it pains me to admit it. Not looking for some item then, and certainly not for treasure since they left your latinum. That leaves only one choice. They came looking for a person. Somebody in particular here on the station. Great. That narrows it down. A brilliantly concise deduction. We have another piece of evidence you overlooked, Constable Quark. Yes? They searched the entire station and killed all but we two. Either they were wildly misinformed, or the person they wanted was one of us.
Commander Sisko still sat at the tractor beam controls, the batter's box as he called it, though the invader had not made a move in some time. Dax sat at her console, rubbing her temples and thinking through the evidence.
All right. Somehow, Quark obtains a sealed box containing an unknown device from the Gamma Quadrant. Odo has O'Brien scan it. They head back to Quark's place. Then they disappear. A day later, the invaders show up looking for somebody, the other one like them. They insist we're holding him. This can't be a coincidence, Benjamin.
Not likely. What did Quark and Odo find?
My guess? I would say that whatever the device was, it included some sort of subspace transponder belonging to the other one.
Yes. Yes, old man, that's it. That device put out a subspace signal that said, "Here I am." No wonder they don't believe us when we say we don't have him. The physical evidence says we do.
Great. Now what?
Old man, do you think that you can make those phaser grenades the O'Brien specials?
Probably. Why? Wait, don't tell me. I don't think I want to hear this.
Sorry, Dax. It's our only chance. O'Brien's irregulars held out as long as they had O'Brien's specials. You've got to take more to the remaining civilians.
You mean down in the war zone?
In the meantime, I have some serious thinking ahead. If this doesn't work, if we can't hold them,
then what?
Don't ask, old man. You don't want to hear it.
An hour later, Dax skulked through the habitat ring, carrying a bag of O'Brien's specials and trying to look in every direction simultaneously. Suddenly, a memory tickled the back of her brain. Something about replicating phasers. The replicators could not replicate a charged phaser because they could not actually create energy. All they could do was rearrange molecules. The only way they could create energy of a sort was to create chemicals that could then interact like... Dax slapped her comm badge so hard she almost knocked it off her shirt.
Like gunpowder! Benjamin, I've got it! We can't replicate phasers, but we can replicate an arsenal of gunpowder firearms.
Dax, you're a genius.
I keep telling you that.
Sisko patched her tricorder into the computer using her comlink, and she downloaded full specifications of the most powerful firearm she could find, the Klingon windowpane, to a data clip.
Good luck, old man. Toast an invader for me.
Jadzia Dax sprinted down the corridor, passed through a closed and sealed airlock, and found the nearest replicator. She felt a presence loom behind her before she got even halfway. Her spots flushed a deep reddish brown. She turned slowly. It stood in the doorway, still as stone, hand-sized firearm pointed at her face. Chills marched along her spine as she heard her death sentence.
Where is the other one like us?
She slid a step closer to the replicator, readying the data clip in her fingers. I can figure it out, but I need more information. How did you find out the other one was here? Her questions threw its rhythm off. She took another step. Almost there.
We received the signal.
Nailed it, she thought. Is the signal produced by a device? We might locate the other one by finding the signaling device. Dax took the final 2 sideways steps. Now, she thought, how to jam in the data clip and replicate a window pane before it blows my head off.
Yes, where is the device?
Our chief engineer had it. Then it was in Quark's place, the large building on the promenade where you first beamed. Let me lead you. We'll find this device together, friend. But I'm very hungry. I can't think unless I make some food.
Did you see this device?
Yes. Do you mind if I obtain some food from this replicator?
What does the device look like?
It's, the size of my hand with a hand grip, smooth, like your helmet? Dax knew instantly she had said one thing too many. The device was smooth like your helmet. Ding! Wrong guess, Lieutenant, but thank you for playing. I'm sorry, my mind must be going. I meant to say it was rough. The Inquisitor calmly raised his hand firearm. Dax whirled to the replicator, jammed in the data clip. She heard a gunshot behind her, and the replicator control pad exploded into a wreckage of metal, plastiglass, and bright blue electrical discharge. She turned back to face the invader, knowing she had lost her gamble. I prefer it in the front. She smiled, strangely peaceful at death. The explosion filled her ears, echoed like a deep rumble of the fusion reactors. Dax rocked back, balanced on her heels for an eternity. Then she slowly collapsed into a delicious, foggy shroud. Blackness, she thought. I should see blackness. Instead, every color of the prism swirled around her vision, red predominating, ruby, damask, vermilion, deepening unto the infrared. The last stretched on like life, never quite ending, until the wavelength was infinite, energy approaching zero, but never quite arriving. A tiny fluctuation remained, a whisper of coherent frequency. A piece of Dax remained, felt the lifeless body surrounding her. Merciful Mother, thought Dax. Not Jadzia or Curzon, just Dax. Jadzia's brain is dead, but I am still alive in her chest and still connected. But can I still move this body? The host Jadzia brain was dead, but except for the broken arm, the rest of her body worked. The Trill implant Dax, the worm, was still alive. The undamaged arm lifted jerkily. The eyelids fluttered open, and Dax could see blurrily. The Inquisitor had turned its back, was leaving through the smashed door. Dax raised Jadzia's right arm, a phaser grenade clutched tight. Dax made the thumb press the 1 for 1 second, then press arm. It flung the grenade like a catapult. The Inquisitor was blown forward against the inner bulkhead by the force of the explosion. It did not get up again. Apparently, they were somewhat inadequately armored from behind. Jadzia's eyesight dimmed as even the automatic functions began to shut down. The infrared deepened, the frequency dropping. The wavelength approached infinity asymptotically,
as the frequency dropped to 0. I did it, was Dax's last thought, though it no longer remembered what exactly it had done. Quark walked past a door knocked off its hinges. Then he stopped, face turning distinctly yellowish.
What's wrong, Quark?
Did you glance inside that room?
No.
You should.
Odo stared at Quark. The Ferengi was acting odd, even for a Ferengi. Puzzled, the constable retraced his steps, glanced inside.
I'm afraid you weren't hallucinating, Quark. It is she.
Jadzia Dax sat on the floor, leaning back against the outer bulkhead, with an enigmatic smile. The enticing spots along her neck, normally dark brown, were now bone white. One large bullet hole marred the perfect beauty of her lovely face, in her forehead, directly above her eyes. She looked as if she had carefully sat against the wall to die. But that was absurd. The forehead center shot would have pierced her brain to the stem, killing her instantly. The Ferengi crouched low to look one last time at her perfect face. He was startled by an exclamation from the normally implacable Odo.
I was right.
Lying against the inner bulkhead was the dead body of an invader. Quark stared back at Dax, understanding her cryptic, serene smile. Jadzia Dax had figured how to kill an invader.
Quark, I think I know this race.
Odo tugged, pulled the black bubble off of the creature's head. Inside was a vaguely reptilian face, covered by soft, springy, cactus-like spines. The eyes were huge and perfectly circular.
Who are they?
Quark remained as far away from the invader's body as he could.
They have no name. They are the most secretive race known.
What do you mean they don't have a name?
I mean they don't tell anyone who they are. They don't make treaties, trade agreements, or friends. The Cardassians call them Bekir, after a Cardassian animal similar to an earth badger or a Ferengi digfish. The Bekir are extreme xenophobes, despising all other races. Nobody knows anything about them.
Well, I guess we know something now. We know they can come tens of thousands of light years to attack a deep space trading station.
That is curious, Quark. According to Cardassian law, there are only two ways to provoke an attack by Bekir: to attempt to find out their home system, or to hold one of them captive.
Odo and Quark simultaneously looked at each other, immediately grasping the obvious. Odo spoke first.
So, some kind of signal made them think a Bekir was being held on DS9. Now, I wonder what that something could be. Eh, Quark?
Without warning, Odo turned his arm into flexible, snake-like appendages that whipped out, coiled around the Ferengi, and dragged him closer. Quark struggled and squawked, trying to keep far away from the Bekir body. As Odo dragged Quark closer, a device on the Bekir's wrist glowed brightly.
Spill it, Quark. Drop your little toy into my hand. Now!
Quark cringed and handed over the device using the dead rat grip. Odo pulled the Bekir's arm from underneath its body, held the device up to a wristband. The band flared bright red. First step, thought Major Kira, is to get a gun that even the invaders have to respect. Her years in the Shakar served her well. Kira hid in a vent, then ambushed the first unlucky lone invader who happened by. She knocked it to the ground and stuck one of Dax's phaser grenades beneath it, stunning the bubblehead. Before it could recover, she hijacked its rifle and ammunition and vanished. She spent some time rounding up as many children as she could find, as many as she could find who were still alive. She picked up a pair of Bajoran pilots along the way. Major Kira Nerys held up her hand. Behind her, the column of children and a few adults stopped, frightened. She checked the time. 27:15. 15 hours since the invasion had begun. She put her finger to her lips and pointed forward, past the intersection. The 12 children scuttled past the occupied corridor. Alas, one of the two Bajoran runabout pilots Kira had rounded up slipped, her shoes making a loud squeak on the polished deck. The invaders turned at the sound. Kira caught the first one with a dead center shot in its chest, using the captured rifle. The bullet cracked through the armor as if it were papier-mâché, apparently killing the occupant instantly. The moment it fell, it flared brilliant red. Kira turned her face away. When she looked back, the invader body had vanished, leaving behind nothing but its heat-twisted armor. Strange, she thought. The bullets didn't do that to us. Kira Nerys crouched low with her rifle, just peeking around the corner. Her invader counterpart dropped to its belly and began plinking at her. Rather than waste ammunition on an impossible shot, Kira ventured 10 meters down the corridor, then hovered, hugging the bulkhead and aiming low. When the invader cautiously eased its bubble head around the corner, she fired 2 rounds into its face. The invader convulsed, then fell still. A second later, it too melted into a bubbly goo. Kira nodded, finally understanding. It was a security mechanism designed to prevent the invader bodies from falling into enemy hands.
Move out, kids, now!
The invaders grew more technologically innovative by the hour. They had extended their signal-damping field so that ops could not even beam people to a pad on the runabout. Instead, they had to hoof it right through the combat zone. It was a rescue fraught with peril. She contacted Commander Sisko.
Sir, you've got to distract them when we launch, or they'll just shoot down the runabout.
I can fire a full barrage of torpedoes. Warn me just before you launch. Get the kids out if you can. But we both know I must stop this invasion, even if it means destroying Deep Space Nine. Sisko out.
They cut through what seemed like kilometers of corridors, avoiding invaders when they could, fighting when forced. At last, they stood directly below the runabout service bay. The lift was inoperative, but a ladder led up. Kira went up the ladder first, followed by the pilot with the squeaky shoe, the parade of children, and the backup pilot. They had almost reached the service bay when a single shot exploded beneath them. The backup pilot dropped heavily, dead before he struck the deck. Kira swore angrily, leaned way off the ladder, dangling by 1 foot and hand. The position left her utterly vulnerable while the kids crawled past. She could not aim and fire the invader gun with one hand. She could, however, fire from the hip. Kira blindly fired a steady drumbeat of shots down the ladderway. Above her, the last of the children cleared the hatch into the service bay. Major Kira Nerys climbed into the service bay behind them and lay on her stomach, peering down into the gloom. She waited, heart pounding, breath ragged. The kids dashed across the bay to the runabout, opened the door and piled in. Their silent, pinched faces looked back at Kira. She shook her head. A tear wet her cheek. Bye, luck. Kira turned her attention back to the ladderway. A bubblehead moved cautiously into the light. This time, Kira could use both hands. She aimed, fired, and its helmet shattered in an explosion of black blood and prickly flesh. It fell heavily, flared brilliant red, and turned into a slag heap. Something flew up at Kira, hitting her in the nose. She blinked with surprise. It was a black cylinder, as wide and thick as her fist, made of some sort of metal. Before even consciously realizing what it was, she kicked it back down the hatch and threw herself to the side. The cylinder exploded violently, knocking her off her knees. She scrambled up, saw another black cylinder incoming. The force caught her full in the face and upper body, flinging her back away from the hatch into the service bay. Stunned, Kira rolled back and forth, trying feebly to get off her back and onto her knees again. The runabout was just clearing the deck between the service bay and the launch pad, rotating to face outward. She watched it as it passed through the launch pad, fired impulse engines again, and disappeared behind the lip of the deck hatch.
Launching. Have to tell Sisko it's launching.
Gasping, she rolled to her knees just as the first black bubblehead popped up the hatch. She crouched, rifle pointed at the hatch, waiting either to fire a round or stick another grenade.
I could do this the rest of my life, you bastards.
The runabout Orinoco launched from Deep Space Nine, streaked away from the station. The invader ship's sensor array tracked the small craft, launched a single missile. The shot sheared away the runabout's starboard impulse engine, causing the pilot to lose control. For an instant, she appeared to regain her course. Then she turned inexplicably, headed directly back toward the launch bay. Closer, closer. 2 more grenades popped up the hatch. Out of the corner of her eye, Major Kira saw one roll just a few meters away, and she braced for impact. She blinked, found herself across the service bay upside down against a bulkhead. She saw another grenade explode silently, felt the buffet, but did not hear anything. Prophets, I'm deaf. She looked down past her right foot. The roof of the service bay had been blown apart, leaving a clear view up to the launching pad, thence through the terminal to space itself. Were it not for the pad force shield, Kira and the rest of the launching bay contents would be blown out into space. Major Kira rolled upright and tried to stand, but collapsed instantly. Looking down, she saw that her left leg was gone. A wave of dizziness overcame her. She let her head sink back, looking up at the stars. She saw a tiny pinpoint of light through the peeled-back ceiling, like a bright star moving erratically across the sky. Dax was suddenly beside her. Where had she come from? The Trill knelt beside Kira, stroked her hair with phantom hands, telling her to hang on. Dax suddenly turned into Kira's mother as the bright spark grew brighter, larger. Abruptly, Kira realized that the light was really a Bajoran torch ship docking at the launching pad, come to take her home to Mother. Mother patted her hand, but she was still Dax. Kira Nerys smiled. The prophets had come, riding a hot runabout. They settled. She saw them loom large, larger. The Orinoco slammed directly into the runabout launching bay at several hundred meters per second, crushing Kira beneath tons of metal and leaving no remains to be found. Odo stood, looked across the room past the wrecked runabout. Near the service bay door, a strangely wrapped bundle caught his attention. He strolled closer to visually examine it.
Quark, come here and look at this.
At the shapeshifter's feet lay the body of a child. It was laid out straight, covered with an emergency blanket from a med kit.
So? It's another body. It's not Nog, is it? No, but Quark, I didn't cover it, and neither did you. The Bakir would never undertake such funerary concerns for another species. The only rational conclusion, Quark, is that we are not alone on Deep Space Nine.
Quark and Odo continued their trek, but found no other dead invaders. They did, however, discover more and more bodies that had been carefully covered. The phantom survivor was evidently either Federation or Bajoran. No one else would have bothered covering the dead. The infirmary door was wedged shut. It took the two of them all the strength they had to pull it open enough to enter. Dr. Bashir was quite dead, sitting on a stool, back propped up by his own desk. A circular bullet hole graced his forehead between his eyes. The wound had bled copiously, caking Bashir's face. Behind him, a personal medical log input screen flashed off and on. Recording, await input. Recording, await input. Odo leaned over. Replay log. Quark and Odo stared, grotesquely fascinated, as the agitated image of Bashir appeared on the screen. For a minute and a half, Dr. Bashir tersely recorded his medical log entry detailing the casualties from the Gamma invasion. The med lab door slid open. Outside, Bashir saw 2 soldiers dressed in armor with black bubble helmets covering their heads. "May I help you?"
This is the medical lab?
"Yes." The 2 invaders entered the lab. When Julian saw their rifles, he realized who and what they were. What do you want?"
Where is the other one like us?
Bashir was about to answer that he did not know when a sudden premonition that it was the wrong thing to say stopped him. "Would he have been brought here?"
The other was distressed and may have been injured. An injured captive would be taken here.
"Yes, if he were injured, he would be taken here. Would he have still been wearing the armor?"
The armor may have been removed upon capture. The other wore a signaling device.
Bashir strained to think of something else to ask, to establish a dialogue and perhaps save his life. "A device? What did it look like?" The invader flexed its hand, held up a peculiar device for the doctor to see. Superficially, it resembled nothing so much as a huge, ornate belt buckle. "So you believe the other one is here because you received a signal from that device, yes?"
Yes.
"A voice signal? Did you talk to the other one?"
The signal is automatic when activated.
Then you don't actually know that the other one was ever here. What if somebody else got a hold of this device and activated it somehow?
This will be known soon.
Why? How can you tell who activated the device?
We will stay until the other one reappears.
Quark shrank as small as he could manage, wishing he had Odo's ability to turn into a chair or potted plant. The device the Bekir held up was identical to the one Quark had activated in his office. It was obvious what happened. Quark himself was the somebody else who had accidentally signaled the Bekir. Odo froze the log playback and stared pensively at the screen.
A signal, Quark. It must be a distress signal that summons the nearest Bekir rescue unit. But what did it mean until the other one reappears?
Oh, no. Something's been gnawing at my ears for hours now, and I just figured out what it is. When when the device activated, what did you say happened to us?
The static time field. We were frozen for 3 days with no passage of internal time.
But think about it, Odo. What would that look like from the outside?
I would assume it would look like a perfect mirror, or perhaps a solid black sphere.
Wouldn't that be rather noticeable?
One would think so.
Of course it would. If nobody noticed your absence, I'm sure the disappearance of the most prominent Ferengi citizen of Deep Space Nine would cause a frantic search, beginning in Quark's place. What would you think if somebody went missing and in his office you found a huge, impenetrable, mirrored or black globe?
I concede I would think there might be some connection.
Ha! You tested with every known sensor you had. My office would have looked like Ops. Did you see any equipment in there?
Well...
And what about the Bekir? Surely they know what it looks like. Why didn't we pop back into the real world surrounded by a platoon of the spiny creeps? It makes no logical sense, Odo. We could not possibly have been in a time stasis field.
Odo traced the logic from beginning to end, sure there was a flaw. Quark, the logician? It was absurd. But he found no hole.
But that means that instead of being frozen in time for 3 days, we actually jumped forward 3 days. Some sort of quantum... well, you know.
Exactly, Odo. And that must be what the Bekir meant. He meant they would wait until we reappeared 3 days after activating the distress signal.
Odo took over. Even the shape-changer felt a strange dread, looking from the frozen image of Bashir trying to save himself to Bashir lying dead, having clearly failed.
Which leaves a curious puzzle, Quark. Where are they? You activate the device. Don't think I haven't deduced that much, Quark. Sending a distress signal to the Bakir while simultaneously catapulting us 3 days into the future. The Bakir receive the signal, presume it is one of their own people taken captive. They follow the signal through the wormhole to Deep Space Nine. Quark, don't you see what's wrong with this construction? If they know we're not going to reappear for 3 days, then why bother asking where the other one is? Unless the Bakir sometimes reappear early, Odo. Quark, you've got it. There must be some way of returning through time to arrive somewhat before the 3 days have elapsed. Resume playback.
Bashir had played the game well, but in the end, it was like Sir Arthur Eddington's rewriting of Newton's 3 laws of mechanics. You can't win, you can't break even, and you can't even quit the game. As was inevitable, the Inquisitor eventually tired of 20 questions and shot the good doctor.
Terminate playback.
Odo copied the log entry onto a data clip, tucked it into his pocket.
Evidence. This is still an investigation.
All at once, the Ferengi's ears curled back. Someone behind him. Quark spun abruptly, intending to dive to the floor and let whatever it was shoot Odo instead of himself. Jake Sisko stood in the med-lab doorway, staring at them as if they were ghosts. Molly O'Brien clutched his hand, silent and white as death. Molly grabbed Jake's legs, hid behind them, and Jake put his hand protectively on her head, just as his father would.
Odo and Quark, how did you two survive? And where were you? People were looking all over the station for you.
Odo quickly sketched the events of the last subjective day to Jake, but he altered the story somewhat, telling the boy that the device activated itself without help from anyone. He needed Jake's absolute trust, which would be impossible if Jake thought either Odo or Quark was responsible for the attack on the station and for the presumed death of Benjamin Sisko, Jake's father. Odo completed the tale.
When the Bakir received the distress signal, they decided we were holding one of them hostage and demanded his release, killing all who could not answer. But that brings up an interesting question, Jake. Perhaps you can help me with this.
What?
Where are the Bakir? Where did they go and why?
Jake's eyes began to drift, as if the memory was so painful his brain would not allow him to remember. Not yet. Noticing the boy's distress, Quark asked his own question.
Jake, you haven't told us how you saved Molly. Was Nog with you then? What happened to him?
Jake blinked, returned to reality.
Oh, well, let me start back at the school 2 days ago, about 12:30.
Jake began to tell his tale. It calmed and centered him.
Nog worked the grill loose on an air duct leading out of the schoolroom. It was one of Nog's favorite ditching routes. I got Molly to climb through the hole and was just about to follow when the invaders, the Bakir, spotted us. Mrs. O'Brien jumped the guy. I've never seen anything like it. I almost ran back to help her, but I remembered Molly. Mrs. O'Brien sacrificed herself for Molly, and I couldn't let her down. I dived after Nog and Molly, then the schoolroom blew up behind me. We crawled and crawled. Nog wanted to head toward the habitat ring, but I thought we should go to Ops. We couldn't get in. It was sealed, and I couldn't override it. I figured Nog was right after all, and we dogged to the habitat ring to hole up until the war was over. Had to dodge a bunch of Bakir patrols, but we made it.
Jake broke off telling his tale. Both he and Quark noticed that Odo was not listening. The constable stood absolutely still, forgetting even to simulate breathing.
Odo? Are you all right? Huh? Oh, yes, I was just thinking. Jake, do you remember what time it was when you heard Commander Sisko's evacuation order?
We were almost done for the morning. I'd say it was about 12:30.
Quark and I reappeared in the office about 10:30 this morning. How long has it been since we appeared, Quark?
The Ferengi fished out an ornate pocket watch, scrutinized it.
It's 10:30 now, and I think my watch read about 12:40 when I looked at it right after we reappeared, almost 24 hours.
So, the invaders attacked the station shortly before 12:30 the day after we vanished, somewhat less than 26 hours after we disappeared. Assuming the Bakir device moves us backward in the same lump of time as it moved us forward, then if we went back right now, we'd arrive back at about 10:30 the morning of the attack. That is, your watch should sync up with the station time again.
Odo, the attack wouldn't have begun yet, so that means we have 2 hours to figure out how to make this blasted thing go into reverse. Odo, if we can do that, we can erase this whole last 3 days. The attack never comes. Nobody is killed.
If we can figure out how to reverse the Bakir device, Quark, if we can do it in the next 2 hours, and if we can get the Bakir not to attack when we do get back.
Quark and Odo watched each other silently, each waiting for the other to make a suggestion.
Well, unless you've got some brilliant idea, Quark, this is a purely philosophical discussion. Even if the Bakir figured out a way to go back in time, which is itself pure speculation, we don't know how to do it.
Quark had the signaling device out and was studying it intently.
I think I may have an idea.
Odo snatched it away, staring at it himself.
What? How did you get this out of my pocket?
Don't bother staring, Odo. It takes the cleverness of a Ferengi to deduce how to reverse this complex device.
The constable pointed at a shallow slot zigzagging across one face.
There. It looks like there's a piece missing. I'll bet if we found that missing piece we could jump back. So, what was your idea, Quark?
Never mind.
So where might the piece have come from? What else was in the Cardassian strongbox, Quark?
Everything was ordinary. Nothing strange or remotely shaped like that.
Odo was not listening, however. For an instant, he almost lost his form. He normally had to revert to his liquid state every 16 hours. With tremendous willpower, he could hold out somewhat longer. If they could not get back soon, Quark, Jake, and Molly would have to continue the quest alone. Of course, the attack would have already started, and many, many people would already be dead. Odo barely regained control over his rebelling molecular structure. He was still Constable Odo for a time.
Jumping forward poses no problems as far as the universe is concerned. You just found a really clever hiding place for 3 days. But jumping back, Quark, now that the Bakir would want to control absolutely. In fact, I bet you...
Quark interrupted, grasping the thought.
I'll bet the missing piece is on the Bakir, not on the device, Odo. It's probably attached to the Bakir armor itself, so even if you steal the device like the Cardassians did, you wouldn't be able to use the time reverse function unless you also got a Bakir.
I was just about to say that, Quark. So where would we find a dead Bakir with a functional time reverse unit?
The pair immediately looked at each other, remembering at the same instant. Quark spoke first.
The habitat ring. A dead Bakir. Dax found a way to kill one, and it's still there.
The constable closed his eyes, visualizing the various pieces of Bakir armor.
Now, where did those blasted aliens keep that key?
One reason Odo had been so successful as an investigator was his uncanny ability to notice and remember the smallest detail. He carefully examined the sprawled body in his mind, finally focusing on the wrist braces. He remembered many little interlocking pieces.
If the key is on the armor, it's a good bet we'll find it on one of the wrist braces.
Quark ran for the door, then stopped. Odo had not moved.
Well, what are you waiting for, Odo? Instructions from Starfleet?
Odo said nothing. He pondered deeply, tugging on his chin and stretching it like putty down to chest level, like a boy stretching his chewing gum out of his mouth.
Stop that! It's nauseating!
Quark, we can't make it.
Can't make it? We have 3 hours!
3 hours isn't enough time to get all the way back to where Lieutenant Dax died, find the unit, then return all the way to your office.
Why back to my office? Just because we jumped from there?
Why, Quark? Tell me, how do you plan to activate the unit, assuming we find one?
Why, I suppose I'll probe it with my... my ear pricker.
Quark gasped and clapped his hand over his mouth, while Odo finished the thought for the Ferengi.
Your ear pricker, which you cleverly dropped back in your office. Thank you, Quark. Excellent planning. We'll have to find a way to Quark's place directly, and by then we'll have no time to make it out to the habitat ring.
So where do we find another Bakir body?
Molly sat down, looking sleepy. Odo and Quark both looked significantly at Jake.
I guess we'll just have to put on our memory caps, eh, Quark?
Jake spoke up, either not noticing the significance of Odo's remark or pretending not to notice. I can get you to Quark's place. Nog and I used to explore the access corridors all the time. The ones in and out of Quark's in particular.
Lead the way, lad. Quark and I will follow.
Jake coaxed Molly to her feet, then led them as hurriedly as he could in the darkness.
Jake, I wonder if you could tell me what happened to my nephew.
Jake was silent for many steps, then finally answered. Nog died, Quark. The Ferengi said nothing. I guess he died in an un-Ferengi way, but he saved my life and Molly's. The Bakir spotted us and Nog took off. He led them away, let us escape. He was my friend, Quark. He did you proud. After Jake finished, neither Quark nor Odo said a word. There was nothing to say. In a way that Quark could not explain even to himself, he understood his nephew's actions. He spoke at last.
He must have spent too much time around humans. But there are times when even Ferengi can be heroic.
Jake led them to a grill 2 meters above the deck. Stretching, the boy unsnapped it from the hatch, laid it on the deck. He hesitated a moment, then cupped his hands to give Quark a leg up. Once the three were crawling, Jake in front, followed by Molly, Odo, and Quark, the constable spoke as offhandedly as he could.
So, Jake, do you have any idea where the Bakir are now? Did they leave?
They're all gone.
That's a bit vague, isn't it? Did they leave the station?
Not exactly. Quark had an awful thought.
Odo, you don't think they could have used their devices, do you?
It's possible. It would account for their disappearance. Jake, did they simply vanish?
No, I'm pretty sure most of them are dead. Odo hesitated a long time before asking his next question, but Jake seemed stronger than he had when they first met.
Jake, what happened to your father?
The boy said nothing.
Is there anyone else alive on the station that you've seen besides us?
No.
Then your father must be...
He's not dead. Jake immediately reached back and soothed Molly, who had begun crying. Odo ceased the interrogation, which was going nowhere anyway. Later, he decided. At last they reached their destination, the point they had started from so many hours ago, Quark's place. Jake squirmed around, kicked the grating until it wrenched free from the hatch. He lightly hopped down into the casino, then helped Molly. Odo and Quark followed. Inside his office, the Ferengi found everything as he had left it. He stopped, picked up the ear pricker from where he had dropped it.
All set. Now all we need is the key.
Odo turned to Jake Sisko.
Son, I know that it's very painful. You lost your mother in a Borg attack, and now you must face up to what happened to your father. But we must know what happened. If Commander Sisko killed the Bakir, we must find their bodies. Otherwise, we will not be able to return and avert the attack.
For a long moment, Jake stared at the deck. Only his eyelids moved, blinking rapidly. He seemed lost in a trance.
I don't know how much I can remember. It's confusing.
You must try, human. Nod didn't hesitate, will you?
Molly and I hid in the air ducts and ventilation shafts. We constantly kept moving so they couldn't get a fix on us. The Bakir patrols were everywhere. God, Odo, they had us. They had DS9 under total control.
Jake covered his eyes with his hands. For a moment, Odo thought the boy was crying. Then he realized Jake was simply trying to visualize how it was 2 days and 1,000 years ago. A chill crept up the spine of Commander Benjamin Sisko. He had just witnessed the out-of-control Orinoco runabout plow into its own landing dock. After fruitless attempts to raise Kira, Dax, anybody, he realized he was now alone. Everybody else was dead or dying. Worse, he had the distinct feeling that the invaders had finally figured out where Ops was and were on their way up at that very moment. He briefly considered remaining at the console, going down with the station. Then he remembered his primary duty. No invader must be suffered to leave DS9 alive. He ran to the access ladder, peered down its depths. He thought he detected steps moving in the blackness, but it could also be his imagination. The only 3 ways to leave Ops were transporting, climbing down the ladder, or using the turbolifts. The first was prevented by the invaders' damping field, the second by the imminent presence of armed invaders on the ladder, and the last by the disruptions to power conduits, junction nodes, and the wrecked turbolifts. A nascent thought tickled his brain. True, the turbolifts were disabled, but the turbolift shafts themselves might be clear. Sisko slung the last ever bag of O'Brien's specials over his shoulder. He climbed down the Ops entrance lift to the deck below, where the actual turbolift shaft began. He hurriedly pried open the closed doors of the turbolift and slid through. The doors slammed shut behind him. He looked down the dark shaft, faintly illuminated by flickering light through the door cracks. This is a long way down. Sisko began the long climb down the shaft. He clumped down level after level, the bag of highly explosive jerry-rigged phasers swinging out, then smacking back against his rump until he reached a landing where the turbo shaft changed directions. Below him, the track made a graceful, majestic turn to the horizontal, after which it spiraled around the promenade from level 9 to 11, then down to level 15. The turbolift bottomed out at level 28, still 7 levels above the fusion reactors, which were his goal. Slowly he clumped down the track, boot steps echoing hollowly inside the metal cage. He still had his last duty, the grimmest duty any commander can be called upon to perform. They must not take the station cheaply. They must not take it. Cost has to be devastating. Anything less, we've got a full-scale invasion coming. He checked the time. 0400, almost 18 hours after the invaders first approached the station. He leaned on his knees, gasping for air. Got to sacrifice the station. No choice. On the other hand, somebody had to live to warn the Federation, and the only person he could trust that he did not positively know was dead was his own son, Jake. Sisko was uncomfortably aware that this whole line of reasoning might be rationalization, just trying to find excuses to save Jake from the fate that he had decreed for everyone else, including himself. So what? So what if it is rationalization? He's my boy. I'm going to save him if I can. But how could Sisko warn his son what he was about to do without also warning the invaders? Sisko did not want to destroy the station by blowing up the photon torpedo armory, since that would also destroy all the evidence of the invasion. The only alternative was a massive electromagnetic pulse effect, which might kill the invaders, depending on how strong their armor was. There were only 5 places on DS9 where Jake would be shielded from the pulse. Ops, the central axis of DS9, or one of the 3 weapons sails. Sisko had to somehow warn his son to get to a shielded area, if Jake were still alive and conscious. At the bottom of the turbolift track, he entered a cold, antiseptic cargo bay that throbbed with power from the fusion reactors, a mere 7 levels below. Finally, he found what he wanted, a hard-wired communications intercom. Now, how do I warn Jake? Never mind. Got plenty to say first. Computer, open ship-wide intercom along hard channels. He breathed deeply, carefully composing his message. At last, he began to speak. Attention, invaders. This is Commander Benjamin Sisko, commanding officer of the Bajoran and United Federation of Planets, Starbase Deep Space Nine. I hereby formally surrender this station. I direct all Bajoran militia forces to lay down their arms. This is a direct order. Further defensive operations will be considered a criminal act under the Uniform Alliance Act of Baylor II. He waited, smiling, letting the words sink in. As surety for safe conduct off Deep Space Nine for all crew and residents, and to ensure the cessation of hostilities on the part of the invading forces, I shall continue to hold my prisoner hostage. This prisoner was taken into custody 56 hours ago. We are holding the prisoner in a secret location which we shall not disclose until all Bajoran and Federation personnel have left the station. I am now ready to negotiate safe passage and the terms of surrender. I await your presence in the reactor pod, level 35, the lowest level in the station. You have 30 minutes to arrive. If 30 minutes pass and you have not arrived, I shall execute the prisoner. Sisko licked his lips, and now came the warning that he prayed Jake would understand. After the Vedek Win incident, Sisko had decided to send his own son to Bajoran Sunday school classes as a goodwill gesture. Besides, he felt a dose of spiritual values might do Jake good. He prayed that Jake had actually studied his lessons. In the name of the great god, Susurora, I pray a great enlightenment envelops us all, allowing us to settle this issue with no further blood spilled. If Jake had paid attention, he would recognize the curious reference to a Bajoran deity. Susurora was the Bajoran god of the sun. Jake stared at the clock. 04:29. His father had made the cryptic announcement 3 minutes ago, giving Jake still another 27 minutes to figure out what he meant. It was obviously some sort of code. Jake knew his father had not suddenly converted to sun worship. Ben Sisko was desperately trying to tell his son something urgent, but Jake had no idea what it was. He continued to run through everything he knew about the Bajoran sun. A little dimmer than Sol, warmer, You can see the aurora from almost anywhere in the northern hemisphere. Big and hot, surface temperature only about 3,500 degrees. Core is several million degrees. Gigantic, continuous fusion explosion. Fusion! He's going to do something to the fusion reactors, Molly. Jake looked at his watch. The luminous display read 0435. 21 minutes left before his father did whatever he would do. Jake wondered if his father would blow them up, make the entire station explode. But that made no sense. If that is what he was going to do, why bother warning Jake? He would die anyway. Why risk the invaders figuring it out too and somehow getting off the station or shielding themselves? No, it's something we can survive if we're smart enough. That's why Dad warned me. Jake paced, furious with himself for not being able to think. He kept looking at his watch. 12 minutes, 11 and a half, 11 minutes left. Look, this is stupid. I'm so scared I can't think. What does Dad always quote? The fear of death is the beginning of slavery. Thoughts popped into his mind, ways that a reactor could go wrong besides exploding. At once, Jake realized what his father was planning. He smacked his head so hard he staggered himself. Of course, a pulse! A huge electromagnetic pulse effect. It fries electronic equipment. Maybe it does the same to a body. Great. Now I know how we're going to die. What exactly can I do in 9 minutes to shield us? Jake suddenly had a strange thought. He squatted down, face to face with the little girl, the daughter of the Chief of Operations, Miles O'Brien. Molly, did your daddy ever talk about shields? Molly nodded. Did he ever say what parts of the station have special shielding? Molly turned her head, stared at him with eyes as big as millstones, but said nothing. Too complicated a question, he decided. Did your daddy ever talk to you about emergencies? Did he say where you should go if the station were attacked and he wasn't with you? He told Mommy. Do you remember what he said? Molly pondered deeply, rubbing her chin in an eerily adult-like mannerism that she must have picked up from her father. Said to go to weepy cells. The weepy cells? Weep cells. Wappy cells, sails. The weapons sails. Come on, Molly, we have to run now. The nearest weapons sail tower was above level 13. He took a last glance at his watch. 6 minutes to doomsday. Grabbing up Molly, Jake sprinted toward the access ladder. Can you climb a ladder? Okay, you go first, Molly. I'll be right behind you. She laboriously climbed one rung, another rung, a third rung. At last, Molly flopped over onto the deck of level 13. Jake charged up the remaining rungs, scooped the girl up in both arms, and pelted down the corridor. He skidded to a halt as he passed a small corridor branching off of the main. That was it. It had to be. He squeezed down the unmarked corridor, pushing Molly ahead of him, then rounded a corner and came to the thickest, heaviest door he had ever seen. It was locked. Stunned, Jake looked at his watch. 30 seconds. 29. 28. Commander Sisko began the long downward climb into the hottest hell that intelligent beings had yet devised, the antimatter-spiked fusion reactor chamber itself. The air was strangely still. Under the right circumstances, it could produce a solitary shockwave, a soliton, called an electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, which exploded outward at light speed like a fist of electromagnetic radiation. The invader armor might partially shield them from the full effects, depending on how far away from the source they were. Thus, the closer he could lure them, the better his chances. Level after level he descended, 6 in all, to finally stand on the heavy deck plates of level 34, directly above the multi-gigawatt reactors. The deck plates contained a single gigantic trap door. It was sealed by 5 screw lugs, each the diameter of a porthole. He wrestled them loose. He sat quite still. Faintly above his head, he heard noises. The invaders had reached the end of the turbolift track, were descending the 6 ladders towards their rendezvous with fate. 5 phaser grenades left. Sisko used one to blow open the hatch. It was far too heavy to lift, at least 300 kilos. Before he could change his mind, Ben Sisko lowered himself down the Badger hole, dropped stiffly to the deck. Level 35, the fusion reaction well. The bottom terminus of DS9. He squeezed back against reactors 1 and 2, a pair of hulking but fragile eggshell cups, each containing an exploding star. Jake led Quark and Molly to the turbolift shaft. They quickly discovered that the lifts were inoperable, at least the touch plate did not glow and no turbolift arrived. His strength ebbing, the constable pried open the doors, and they began the long trek down toward the fusion generators, following, if they only knew, the same route that Sisko himself had followed 2 days earlier. The atmosphere grew thinner and thinner. Small holes had been torn in the hull during the battle, and the atmospheric shield had failed when the station batteries ran down. For some reason, the fusion generators were offline. Jake, Molly, and Quark felt nauseated, their heads pounding from oxygen deprivation. By the time they reached level 32, the ladder was so hot that only Odo could hold it in his bare hands. Quark took off his jacket, gazed lovingly at it. Then he tore it into strips, which he wrapped around the hands of Molly, Jake, and himself. He did the same with his shirt. Using the slight protection, they climbed down 1 more ladder to level 33. There they stuck. The heat coming out from the ladder well was enough to give 3rd-degree burns to anyone who tried to brave it, except, of course, for Odo. Jake put his body between Molly and the heat source, hoping to shield her. "I don't think we're going any deeper. Now what?" Commander Sisko watched wave after wave of invaders pour down the ladderway. He tucked the remaining phaser grenades behind his back against Reactor 2, except for one he gripped out of sight. He pressed the arm button, but did not release it. 17 hours after the attack began, it was about to end. They surrounded and filled all the space between the other cold reactors. As one motion, the invaders raised their rifles to point directly at his heart. The Inquisitor stepped forward, asked his by now tiresome, inflectionless question.
Where is the other one like us?
"I am holding him prisoner. He is in a safe place where you will not find him."
What proof do you give that you are holding one of us prisoner?
"None. Take it or leave it." The Inquisitor hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Finally, it appeared to accept the authenticity of Sisko's claim, for the moment.
What do you require to release the captive?
"First, what are you called? Who are you?"
The ones who used to be here call us Bekir.
Bekir. It was a Cardassian type of badger. A nickname, not a name. "What do you call yourselves?"
What do you require to release the captive?
26 minutes had passed since Sisko made his broadcast. He had promised Jake 30. He could not implement Sisko's last stand for 4 more minutes. He strained his brain. What else could he demand? A wicked thought struck him. Reparations.
What are reparations?
"I demand we calculate the value of each person you killed in gold-pressed latinum, and you pay this bounty to Bajor and the United Federation of Planets.
Animals have no value.
My animals do.
You will lead us to the captive, or you will die.
How long do I have to make a decision?
You are allowed 30 seconds.
For 30 seconds, Commander Benjamin Sisko scowled, studying the deck plates. Every few seconds he glanced at the chronometer. The time limit expired, and he was still 45 seconds away from Jake's safe time. It might not make a difference, or it might mean Jake's life. All right, I'll lead you there. But I just want the answer to one last question. Suppose you were in love with the Queen, and the King found out, and suppose he set you down in an arena in front of 2 doors and told you that behind one of the doors was a beautiful lady, the most beautiful courtesan in the entire kingdom, but behind the other door was a hungry, slavering tiger. The trouble is, you don't know which door leads to which fate. Now, you look up at the Queen, and by a secret sign, she indicates you should open the left door. My question is, did she indicate the door with the courtesan, thus handing you over into the arms of another woman, or did she indicate the door leading to the tiger, deciding she would rather see you dead than with another? In other words, if you open the door she indicated, does it lead to the lady or the tiger? For a second, the Bakir Inquisitor froze, realizing it had been had. In that instant, Commander Sisko released the button on the phaser grenade. The explosion detonating the remaining 3 phaser grenades, which blew apart so violently they instantaneously disrupted the force shield surrounding the 2 reactors. An instant was all that was necessary. The sudden pulse of electromagnetic radiation, uncontained for the briefest nanosecond, expanded outward at light speed through the entire station and the Bakir ship. Every unshielded person on Deep Space Nine died the moment the pulse passed through his or her body, convulsing them like an epileptic seizure. Even the Bakir ship was devastated by the pulse wave. The few surviving crew managed to pilot the ship back into the wormhole, using visual navigation alone, for their electronics were obliterated. And Jake and Molly huddled against the door to the weapons sale control room, waiting, not knowing they were now the only living beings left on board DS9. Quark tried to speak, but could only wheeze.
Oh, it was you who arranged the bodies.
Jake nodded. Odo, if all that Dad did was interrupt the force shield for a moment to let a single pulse through, why is it so horribly hot? For a single moment, Jake, there were 2 exposed, uncontained fusion reactions occurring in the chamber directly below us. They superheated the air to around 8,000 degrees. Jake put his hands over his eyes. No, stop it! Jake, if there were anything left of Commander Sisko before the containment shield broke, there is nothing left now. Of course, we have no idea whether the Bakir armor itself can survive that much heat, or whether the Bakir time key can live through an electromagnetic pulse. For a solid minute, Jake clenched his teeth, as if about to explode. Finally, his muscles softened. Well, how did we survive? We never did get into the weapons sale. Quark looked at Jake.
You have the luck of a Ferengi. You were shielded by the lower sail. You were standing in its shadow.
Odo pondered the death of Commander Sisko, as well as the few other people that Odo might have called friend. Sisko, Dax, Kira, Bashir, Keiko, O'Brien. Even Nog's sacrifice materially contributed to the one chance they had to avert the tragedy. Each brave death was actually a small triumph. Together, the triumphs added up to a possibility. A 50-50 shot. It was all they could hope for. They had been given a chance to undo what had been done. Odo stood shakily. He would not allow this magic moment to be lost by his own weakness. Despite the fact that he could barely even hold his shape, he knew what he had to do.
I'm going down. There are Bakir bodies down there.
He stepped to the ladder, then stopped. He handed Quark the data clip of Dr. Bashir's final log entry.
Guard this evidence, Quark. The heat would destroy it.
Quark nodded dully, started to stick it in his pocket, then realized he was shirtless. Embarrassed, he tucked it in his boot. Odo waded through the energy swamp and descended smartly into hell. The 8,000-degree sodium silicon bath was so bright that normal visible light and infrared were both useless. Odo reabsorbed his head into the main mass of body. He stepped off the ladder onto the deck itself, guessing that he walked on the actual inner side of the hull of DS-9. The normal deck must have melted long ago. With every step, he felt slightly less massive. With a sick feeling, he understood that some part of his living substance was frying, sticking to the ultra-hot hull, then pulling loose from his feet as he walked, leaving literal footsteps behind. He staggered to the right, lowering his hands to brush along the deck in a sweeping search. Odo felt his molecules begin to come apart, as when he liquefied for the evening, but 100 times as strong. He was going to discorporate in about 3 minutes. It would mean his death, of course. Neither Quark nor Jake Sisko could possibly enter the chamber to collect the melted shapeshifter. He shuffled forward and bumped into a pile of Bakir armor, scattering it. Frantically, he slapped at the ground. At last, he found a wrist brace. Sliding his hand down the piece, he discovered the slot, the key. He extruded tentacles that wriggled under the key and pried it loose. Odo rose, reeling. Disoriented, he careened across the floor in the direction he had come. Inferno! Odo's ape-like arms banged against the white-hot ladder, wrapping around it. He shambled up the ladder, knowing only that he must exit hell immediately or be condemned to spend all eternity. At the top, the boiling thing that Odo had become flopped forward, splatting onto the upper deck like sewage. Purgatorio. It humped toward the second ladder like a gastropod, flowed like boiling molasses up and up, then turned a horizontal corner and found itself in Paradiso. It rolled forward, became a jelly, then a thin, bubbling puddle. At the rim of the puddle rested a wafer-thin Bakir key. Quark nearly scooped the key into his greedy hands before remembering that it would probably burn a hole right through them. He fumbled out his pocket watch, 12:10, a scant 20 minutes left. Hunting around, Quark found a high-temperature vacuum and bucket labeled for cleaning up sodium spills, as well as a pair of tongs. He carefully vacuumed the constable, emptying the contents into the bucket. He carefully plucked the belt buckle from his pocket and laid it on the deck, as far from the hellish hole as he could get. Then, shielding his eyes from the worst of the heat, he picked up the tiny key with the tongs. Quark gently shifted the key toward the belt buckle. By the time he got there, his face and arms were burned a bright red. Carefully, he pressed the key home. Quark grabbed the bucket of Odo and ran back to the belt buckle. Gritting his crooked pointy teeth, the Ferengi plucked the ear pricker from his pocket.
You'd better leave, human. I don't know how far this thing's field extends.
Jake smiled. I hope the next time I see you, it'll be when you're throwing me and Nog out of Quark's place again.
Goodbye, boy. You remind me a lot of your father.
Do you really think so? Together, Jake and Molly climbed up the ladder. Quark gingerly probed the belt buckle with the ear pricker. He twisted the vortex, wrenching it to full field break. Deep Space Nine rolled beneath Quark, throwing him to the ground. His stomach felt as if someone had grabbed it and flipped it over for a joke. He blinked, found himself lying on a cool deck, still on level 33. He crawled to the ladderway, peered down. The trap door to the reactor well was firmly shut. Quark stood, sucking in great drafts of air, flooding his brain and body with the needed oxygen. Then he checked the watch. 12:24. He climbed up and up, 6 levels, finally reaching level 28 where the turbolift shaft began. He slapped the control pad, then danced in impotent fury, shaking his fists while the turbolift delayed. At last it creaked into view. Quark jumped aboard.
Ops, hurry!
Quark's pocket watch now read 12:36. The turbolift doors opened, and Quark lurched into Ops, filthy, shirtless, and carrying a bucket of boiling constable. The entire crew stared, and Quark gaped right back. The last time he had seen them, they were shot full of holes.
You're alive!
Kira's mouth fell open.
No, Quark. We all joined the Prophets an hour ago. Now get the hell off Ops. We have a real emergency here.
Quark looked at the view screen. A strange ship hovered menacingly, vicious-looking barrels extending from its battle-scarred hull.
The Bekir! They're already here! Sisko, you have to let me speak to the Gamma Quadrant aliens.
Why must I?
Because I've just come back from the future, and if you don't, they'll attack the station and kill everyone except me and Odo.
Quark suddenly realized that a half-naked Ferengi swinging a boiling pail and babbling about time travel was perhaps not the most credible witness. Kira turned to Sisko.
He's drunk. Permission to eject the Ferengi?
Do you want a lap full of hot Odo?
Yes, Kira. Eject the Ferengi.
Wait! They're called Bekir. Ask them whether they're Bekir.
Quark approached the lovely Lieutenant Dax. The last time he had seen her, she had a bullet hole in her forehead. He poked her shoulder.
Ow!
Iron fingers seized Quark's ear. Kira dragged him toward the turbolift. Quark moaned and rolled his eyes, almost spilling his bucket of Odo.
Ooh!
Kira abruptly remembered that Ferengi ears were erogenous zones. She let go, gagging.
Quark, you miserable little...
The flat, inflected voice from the comm link startled Quark.
Your minute has expired. Surrender your prisoner or be destroyed.
Please be patient. We are still trying to get information on the prisoner. Quark, what do you know about this?
Just ask them if they're called Bekir.
Sisko pursed his lips, finally nodded, and Dax restored the line.
Do the Cardassians call you Bekir?
The ones who used to be here call us Bekir. Prepare to be boarded.
Please, wait a moment. I think we may be able to locate your prisoner.
Sisko advanced menacingly on the shirtless Ferengi.
All right, Quark, you have 3 seconds to explain.
Odo and I...
He suddenly realized how preposterous it all would sound with just his unsupported word. Suddenly, his face lit up.
Yes, I do have something.
Quark sat heavily, began tugging in a frenzy at his boot, where he had put the data clip of Bashir's log. Kira gasped, finally found her voice.
Sisko, the son of a bitch is stripping. Where's that damned phaser?
Quark hallooed, held aloft the medical log. He hopped to the nearest console, jammed the clip into the input slot.
Here, I'll prove I was in the future, in an alternate timeline. Observe!
Dramatically, he thumbed the control pad. The log began to play back. Sisko, Kira, and Dax watched, mesmerized for a moment. Quark fast-forwarded to the death scene, and all 3 members of the audience jumped satisfactorily at the gunshots. The audio line hummed.
The time allotted for animals is ended. Prepare to be boarded.
Shields up, Dax.
Quark looked imploringly at Sisko.
Please, I know who they are and what they want. Just let me talk to them. The shields won't work.
O'Brien shouted from his engineering well.
They've put a shield around the station. It's stopping subspace communications.
Sisko took a deep breath.
All right. Let the Ferengi try.
Dax pressed a touchpad, gestured semi-mockingly at Quark.
Bakir, wait! I know why you're here. You received a signal, right? A distress call.
We received a signal from a Bakir captive.
No, you received a signal from me.
There was a long, pregnant pause. Nobody spoke. Everyone watched Quark in amazement.
How did animals obtain a Bakir signaling device?
I bought it. It was locked in a Cardassian box. Here, this is it.
Quark fumbled for the belt buckle, held it up for the Bakir to see.
I accidentally activated it 25 hours and 42 minutes ago. Does that match your records?
The Bakir froze motionless. After a moment, it began moving again.
We are persuaded to investigate. You will hand over the device.
Gladly.
Quark shuddered as he scuttled forward, placing the device on the transporter pad.
O'Brien, get rid of the damn thing.
The chief nodded, and the belt buckle discorporated. The Bakir ship rotated 180 degrees, fired its engines, and disappeared back into the wormhole. Dax spoke cheerily.
Closed communication. I can see that, old man.
Quark collapsed into an empty chair. 26 hours of torment, guilt, and terror, released in a single moment into delicious lassitude. Perhaps it was time to visit his own holodeck suites? Quark was summoned back to reality by Sisko's stern voice.
Explain yourself, Quark. What were you doing sending an unauthorized signal through the wormhole?
The Ferengi sighed.
I refuse to answer until I can consult with my counsel.
And who precisely is your counsel?
Quark held up the bucket, grinned nastily.
Constable Odo. He's the hottest property around these days.
He continued to grin. It would take at least 2 or 3 days for Odo to cool down enough to reassemble. 2 or 3 days with no Odo poking around his affairs. If Quark had not been so exhausted, he would have leaped in the air and tugged on his ears. In 3 days, Quark decided, he would own Deep Space Nine. He blinked, abruptly brought back to Earth. Kira gazed speculatively, arms folded in Odo-like fashion.
Did you ever notice that when you're naked, you look just like a plucked Tortura bird?
Quark blushed pink, wrapping his arms around his chest. He sprinted for the turbolift. He realized to his horror that the only route to Quark's place was right through the heart of the promenade.
You'll pay for this, all of you. It'll be 3 days of Ferengi heaven.
Odo actually took 4 days to cool, not 3. Incredibly, Major Kira made it her business to ride herd on Quark practically every minute of every one of the 4 days. On the 4th day, a Bornic trader was trying to sell Quark a cargo hold of some native Klingon plant, Turak Tai, used in shamanic rituals. 10 bars of gold-pressed latinum to buy the lot, and the rest would be pure profit. Major Kira suddenly materialized at the bar, listening in rapt attention as Quark and the Born haggled. They stared at her.
Oh, don't mind me. Just go on with what you were doing.
Was not doing no thing.
The Born slid down off the stool and waddled out into the promenade. Quark let his face fall into his arms. After a long time, he looked up again. Kira was still before him, smiling vapidly. At that moment, Odo stormed into Quark's place. As soon as Kira saw him, she waved a cheery goodbye and motored off to Ops. The constable walked straight up to Quark, demanded to know every single thing that had happened since he climbed into the reactor well. Back in his office, Quark told the tale, embellishing his own role only the merest bit. When he finished, the constable stared at the Klingon clock.
Huh. What a peculiar ending. Quark ends up saving Deep Space Nine, in a sense.
In a sense? Although every single human, Ferengi, and Bajoran on board owes his life to me. Me! I haven't received the slightest bit of gratitude from anyone.
Have you told anyone, Quark?
Of course not. Not until you and I can get our stories straight. After all, there's money to be made on this. Why, the Holovision rights alone would be astronomical.
Good, because I've decided we won't tell anyone what really happened. It would be too upsetting. It might compromise my ability to interact with the senior crew if they knew I had seen them dead.
Quark stared, utterly dumbfounded.
Not tell anyone? I, Quark, saved Deep Space Nine from absolute catastrophe? You short-sighted altruist! This story's a Latinum mine.
Odo gazed upon Quark with his haughtiest look.
A catastrophe that you, Quark, brought about.
Odo, I will not pretend I wandered lost in a daze for 26 hours. I have a reputation to maintain.
All right, Quark. Go ahead.
Huh?
Tell anyone you want. But when they ask me for corroboration, I'll tell them you were raving mad with Taraktai tea for a whole day.
Taraktai tea? Oh, you did it again! You were doing it again, you damn spy!
Quark raced around the room, bent over like an old man.
What were you disguised as this time? Police brutality! I'll tell them you broke into my place without... Odo, this time you've gone too far!
Quark, have you not learned yet that nothing you do escapes my attention?
For an instant, Odo's features shifted, changed into those of the Bornic captain, then back to Odo again, so quickly Quark almost missed it. He rose, descended the stairs. The promenade was unusually crowded that day.